In 2013, Chicago realized the promise of smart cities with CTOS, a citywide operating system merging big data with surveillance, security, and transit programs. With a few hundred lines of code, hackers were able to hijack its central servers and cripple the entire grid. Many believed the attack would be a killing blow for smart city development. They were wrong.
San Francisco in Watch Dogs 2 is gorgeous. I mean, genuinely, legitimately beautiful in a way that most open-world cities just aren't. The fog, the murals, the way neighborhoods bleed into each other with actual personality. Ubisoft built a version of this city that feels real, which makes it all the more jarring when you realize this beautiful, carefully crafted world exists solely so you can turn it into a playground. A place where consequences don't exist and revolution is just another viral video waiting to happen. But before we begin, please make sure to like and subscribe if you are enjoying the video. It helps me keep uploading more. San Francisco in Watch Dogs 2 just feels good to exist in. That sounds simple, but it matters. A lot of open-world cities look impressive for 5 minutes and then turn into background noise. This one doesn't. The light hits differently depending on the time of day. The fog drifts in slowly and softens the skyline. You'll be driving across a bridge and catch yourself slowing down for no reason other than it looks nice. There's care here. The neighborhoods feel distinct in ways that go beyond layout. The Mission District feels creative and crowded. Silicon Valley feels clean and slightly uncomfortable. There are murals everywhere, layered over brick and concrete like they've been there for years, not placed for decoration, just existing. You can stop moving and the world doesn't feel empty. People argue on sidewalks, they scroll through their phones, they talk about work, about dates, about nothing important. When you profile them, you get these tiny snapshots of their lives. Someone's deep in debt. Someone's faking a job title. Someone's hiding something small and embarrassing. None of it changes the game, but it gives the city texture. It feels lived in. The streets curve naturally. The hills block your view, and then suddenly open up into wide shots of the bay. The tech campuses look polished and sterile in a way that quietly says more than any villain speech ever could. And that's the key thing. Watch Dogs 2 builds a city that feels grounded, specific, like a real place with its own rhythm. You're not just moving between objectives, you're moving through a space that feels like it exists outside of you. For a game about surveillance, data, and invisible systems layered over everyday life, that grounding is important. The digital layer only works if the physical one feels believable, and for a long stretch of time, it really does. Marcus Holloway works as a protagonist. He is likable, warm, makes jokes that land, feels like someone you'd actually want to be around, and he has a reason to be doing this. CTOs flagged him as a potential criminal based on algorithmic prediction, punished for crimes he hasn't committed because the system ran numbers and didn't like what it saw. That is personal and political simultaneously. What happened to Marcus is happening to thousands. DedSec feels like actual people. Sitara handles messaging. Wrench loves chaos. Horatio's the careful one. Josh brings earnest sincerity that cuts through cynicism. They bicker like people who've spent real time together. The hackerspace gets used between missions just to exist with these people. It works, and there are moments. Horatio's arc specifically, where the game earns genuine emotion. You can see what it is reaching for, a story asking hard questions about hacktivism, whether fighting surveillance with surveillance makes sense, whether viral videos create change or just spectacle. Mr. Robot understood this. Same premise, but made it cost everything. Sit with moral ambiguity. Trust the audience to handle complexity. Watch Dogs 2 has the same DNA. Characters debate. Sitara pushes aggression. Horatio urges caution. Marcus tries figuring out what DedSec stands for. But the debates don't go anywhere. Aesthetic complexity without substance. The game can't commit, can't show operations hurting innocence. In Mr. Robot, revolution leads to collapse and reckoning. In Watch Dogs 2, operations just succeed. No aftermath. Marcus is written as someone who cares about justice. Then you control him infiltrating homes for data, hacking phones, manipulating traffic, waved away as targeting bad people. But this is a game about surveillance dangers. DedSec is that intrusion. There is a mission infiltrating a tech company. Hack servers, expose violations, presented as unambiguous win. Never asks how breaking into systems differs from what the company does. That requires actual philosophy. Principles beyond we're good guys. The follower system makes this impossible to ignore. Social media clout as mechanic, power tied to popularity, supposed satire of influencer culture, but never interrogates what it means. DedSec becomes influencers, fighting influencer culture. Marcus never questions it. The game built these characters with care, gave them real dynamics, then never pushed them anywhere difficult. Watch Dogs 2 has the same ingredients as Mr. Robot, but skips the part where any of it matters. That show made Elliot pay for every decision, made you watch the revolution crumble into something uglier than what it replaced. This just gestures at moral complexity without committing to the discomfort. The hacking does actually feels good. That matters because the first game's hacking was functional, but stiff. Press button. Thing happens, but in this one it's different. More fluid and more creative. You've got a drone, an RC car, environmental hacks scattered everywhere. The game wants you to chain these together, bounce between cameras and devices, solve infiltration like a puzzle with multiple solutions. And when it clicks, it really clicks. You are scoping a building from across the street. Send the drone up to find a window, spot a camera inside, jump to that camera's feed, see a laptop you need to access. Notice a forklift nearby. Trigger the forklift to create a distraction. Guards move to investigate. RC car rolls in through the gap, connects to the laptop. You are out before anyone notices you were there. That feels smart. Feels like actual hacking in the way games rarely capture. Not typing code, but manipulating systems. Finding the path of least resistance by being clever instead of forceful. The game gives you choices. Go in physically or stay remote or mix both. Most missions don't force a specific approach. That sandbox freedom is where Watch Dogs feels most confident. But then there is the other half of your toolkit. The stun gun, the taser, non-lethal options that the game clearly wants you to use. That fit Marcus's characterization as someone who wouldn't kill, and sitting right next to them, a 3D printed sniper rifle, a grenade launcher, an automatic weapon and explosives. The game never comments on this. Never asks why an activist group fighting surveillance would need to ventilate human skulls from 300 meters. You can play non-lethal. The game allows it, even encourages it in that passive way where NPCs occasionally mention you didn't kill anyone, but the design doesn't support it. Enemy placements favor violence. Wanted system escalates until combat feels inevitable. The non-lethal weapons are weaker, less satisfying, less effective. And unlike games that actually commit to non-lethal plays like Dishonored or Deus Ex, there is no meaningful difference in outcome, no consequences for killing, no rewards for restraint beyond self-imposed challenge. So the game says Marcus wouldn't kill while giving you every reason to kill. Says DedSec are activists while designing them as soldiers. Says hacking is the solution while making shooting faster and easier. It is ludonarrative dissonance in its purest form. The story says one thing, but the mechanics say another. And the game hopes you won't notice the contradiction. You can feel this tension in how missions are structured. The game wants you to be clever and to think like a hacker, but it also wants cinematic moments, set pieces, explosions. It wants you to feel powerful. And power in video game language usually means violence. There are missions that work. Infiltrations where the hacking sandbox does exactly what it promises. Where you genuinely feel like you outsmarted security instead of just shooting through it. But there are just as many that devolve into combat regardless of your approach. That funnel you toward violence because the design couldn't figure out how else to create tension. Watch Dogs 2 wants hacking to be your primary tool. It wants it to feel empowering and creative and enough, but it doesn't trust that it is, so it gives you guns, just in case. The strange thing about Watch Dogs is that nothing is technically broken. The city works, the characters work, the mechanics work, and yet, the more you play, the more the whole thing starts to feel weightless. The game talks constantly about systems, about surveillance, about corporations collecting data and shaping behavior. It frames DedSec as a group pushing back against something massive and invasive. But look at how you actually progress through the game. You gain followers. Every big hack, every public stunt, every corporate exposure turns into a number ticking upward in the corner of your screen. More followers means more unlocks. More unlocks means more power. Revolution becomes a growth strategy. It is clever on paper, fits the theme perfectly. In a world obsessed with visibility and engagement, Influence becomes currency, but in practice, it flattens everything. There is no tension in how you gain followers, no risk to going viral, no moment where the attention turns on you or complicates what you are doing. The number only goes up, the system only rewards you. It feels less like dismantling power and more like optimizing within it. And then there is how the world responds to what you do. You expose a company, leak information, ruin reputations, the mission ends. The city continues as if nothing really shifted. The campuses stay open, the streets stay calm, the machine hums along. For a story about disruption, very little is actually disrupted. This extends to how DedSec operates within that world. Marcus profiles random pedestrians constantly. It is baked into how you navigate space. The game presents these data snippets as flavor, environmental storytelling, struggling with debt, cheating on partner. Has embarrassing medical history. You are accessing private information without consent, reducing strangers to data points, making judgments based on algorithmic assessment, which is exactly what CTOs does. The system Marcus is supposedly fighting against. The game never acknowledges this contradiction, never lets you opt out, never frames it as morally complicated. It is just information, just part of being a hacker in this world. But Watch Dogs is ostensibly about the dangers of surveillance, about what happens when entities have power to intrude without oversight or accountability. DedSec becomes that entity. Marcus becomes that intrusion, and it is treated as righteous because he is targeting bad people or using information for good reasons. Except who decides who is bad, who decides what reasons are good? Marcus does, DedSec does. There is no process and no framework beyond their own sense of righteousness. They're operating with the exact same godlike perspective they claim to oppose. Total information awareness and the ability to access any system. It's all justified by their own internal logic about what is right. That is the real tension at the heart of Watch Dogs. It understands the language of modern tech culture, virality, branding, optics, and engagement. It satirizes them openly, but it also builds its entire progression loop around those same ideas. Visibility equals power, numbers equals success. Performance equals change. And by the end, you are not dismantling a system. You are just mastering one. And that is what makes the whole thing feel strangely safe. The city feels alive, the crew feels genuine, and the mechanics feel smart. But the revolution feels frictionless. And without friction, nothing really catches fire.